Psychotechnology
Live. Oh, we got a Psychotechnologies. This is good.
Technologies. So
Yeah.
this is a very interesting episode.
Yeah.
Not special,
That's
but
special.
interesting.
Yeah.
So for backstory, so yesterday we streamed, we had a neuropsychologist on and we streamed my neuropsychology test results. And that happened a couple days ago that I took the test. But yesterday, right before the stream, Elliot walked me through some crazy stuff that was going on. And I was definitely in an altered state going through stuff.
Mhm.
And he claims that this is something called the stages of insight. And so I'd like to hear more about it. So I went through the experience, so I'm going to try to share what it was like from the inside, and Elliot went through the
what happened?
So, yeah.
Like what did you notice or what happened from your perspective?
Yeah. I don't know where to start because I don't know when it started.
Well, like maybe starting at like the instructions. So kind of what did I say to you or what did you try and do? I said here, try this meditative method. But like, what did you take on as the like you were trying?
Oh yeah. So I think we started with what I've been calling the clicking, but it's very quick realizations. So like if you have like Shinzen Young has like the noting where when you hear something you note hearing, when you see something you note seeing. This is 10 realizations a second. So it looks like it feels kind of like a clicking to me. It's like a metronome, like.
Right.
So this is something that I tried to do a while ago. It was like kind of cool. I had some experience with it, but it didn't really stick, and I didn't see it as like fundamental to anything. What I did was I looked online, and there's on YouTube. There's what's it called actually?
So this meditative method is generally called mental noting. Young uses see, hear, and feel. So looking at the various sense doors. So just putting a mental note on something I see, like I'm in my visual field, I can see stuff, and then a moment later, I'm in my sensations, like I'm noticing sensations in my body, and a moment later, I'm hearing my voice and that sort of thing. So to make a note about which sensory perception I'm feeling at any moment. And we can get very specific about those sensations, or just generally like, oh, I'm noticing the switch between the sensation doors. Either is still mental noting. And the point is to try and, well, one way to do mental noting is to try and speed it up. Another is to just not bother. Just whichever speed you're noting at is fine. But to try and speed up, notice there's something interesting about the mind.
Yeah. So like the mind can go a lot quicker than it can realize.
Than it had realized usually.
Yeah.
Particularly like many people when they start a meditative journey, they're like verbal narrative. Like my experiential reality is the thing that my mind is telling itself about. And so I'm only moving as fast as my verbal narrative can go. And then like it can switch from verbally mental noting, like, oh, I'm in my visual field, to like, oh, I'm in my sensation, to just kind of like a knowing sense. Like I know I'm here and I know I'm there. Like it very quickly becomes a non-verbal noting experience. Which move much faster because I don't have to produce the language and like do the like, oh, I am now in my, it takes too long to do that. So that's a speeding up process.
Yeah.
And then the speeding up process, the mental noting seems to cause people to travel the territory of the stages of insight, which is well documented in various old meditative texts. That to put it gently, it's something like minds do this thing and we just don't know what it is. I have a crazy theory that there is some biochemistry underlying the shift in states that one would experience as we go through it. but obviously getting evidence and lining up the like ancient wisdom traditions and biochemistry in the brain, like is going to be a difficult thing. So we might even have to cut open someone's brain while they're doing it in order to measure like the state thing.
Not my brain.
Not my brain, or well, maybe we can find
Hashtag
someone,
enemy.
or maybe we can do some sort of non-invasive testing while we're doing it. I don't know. Well, that'll be a future future science that I look forward to doing. But in my experience, it's super weird to travel that territory because particularly if people are very new to the meditative path, there's like, things are weird and I have no good explanation. Like things get quite exciting and then they crash. Like that's kind of like that's a the shape of this particular meditative path. And particularly like, for example, one of the locations visited in the States is like misery. And when I was going through it, this is like a couple of years ago, the misery was also content filled. Like it was misery and then it was misery about. And it was obviously any memory that felt like popping into my mind had this misery flavored tint to it. Like, oh yes, I'm so miserable about the bad thing that happened back then when I had that stupid conversation with someone, and I'm so ashamed and miserable about it. And so like in that particular stage of the stages of insight, that emotional flavor will tint any experience that I'm having, which is kind of fascinating to notice. Like, and then maybe the same memory will hang around, but I'll shift to the next phase, which is disgust, and I'll look through this at the same memory with that disgust flavor. Made me realize that it wasn't about the content at all. It was about the state I was in. Like the content, like, that memory that I didn't particularly like, but I could like hit it with different angles of emotional experience. Suddenly there was the content, the emotion, and then there was my witnessing. And they were like three different things rather than just like, that's that shameful memory that comes up to my mind at 3 a.m. when I can't get back to sleep. Like, but there's like a predictable territory here, which is kind of nice to know. And exciting that like this is more like something that brains do rather than like something that I do, which is that I pull up negative memories of my past and I like hate myself for it. Like no, minds seem to do that at some point on the journey. So I might send you this link to the stages of insight, and then we can kind of like talk about them along the way, and I'll put it in the video description. But there's I am a big fan of a guy by the name of Daniel Ingram. You like that book? He wrote a very long book describing in it. He like grabbed the stages of insight out of a book called Manual of Insight by Mahasi Sayadaw, and he put it in his book as well. The stages of insight are obviously come out of ancient wisdom traditions, but they seem to still carry some truth today about minds and mental experiences, and the like the stages of insight that even Daniel went through just yesterday that I on the progression. So yeah. So I think my instructions were something like speed up, like do those mental noting, like notice what's going on and let the clicking, he called it a bit of a clicking. I said, let it speed up. And there was like, I think you had some blocks, like you were like, maybe I'll be manic or something. I was like, don't worry, we'll just go through it. in true like confident style. Like, don't worry, it'll be fine. It was a little bit of like, you just have to trust your mind. It's just going to do a thing. And then we like powered through the territory really quickly. But in the book Manual of Insight, Mahasi Sayadaw proposed that the phenomena of the stages of insight are related to, first and foremost, to the mind itself and the stages. So you're mental noting, you're clicking along, you're like, I see a thing, I hear a thing, I feel a thing, I see a thing, and then like something like clicks, so there's like I have a thought in there, and then I noticed that I have had a thought in there, and somewhere in my my process of like see here to think, I'm like suddenly I've like had a thought that isn't the world, right? And I get to notice that there's a separation of mind and body, which is the first stage of the stages of insight. That I am like, oh, my mind and my ability to have thoughts seems to be distinctly different to my body and my subjective perceptions of reality. Like there seems to be a separation. And that's kind of like, oh, that's interesting. So that happens. And also in the process, I was tracking reality one-to-one. Like I was seeing a thing, I was hearing a thing, and then I'm like slightly distracted. And so my tracking of reality is slightly off. And that kind of kicks into gear the process of the stages of insight, the further tracking of reality and the further like falling out of phase with the reality and feeling all sorts of weird things because of it. So here I am having noticed mind and body, the separation, and then I will notice the next one on the list is called cause and effect. And so you're just gonna jump in with it, aren't you? Daniel's gonna play along by jumping through the stages in front of us here. Right?
Okay.
Well, I can see that you've started to jump into something.
Yeah.
Like, and it's important to be clear. This is both a very mild experience because it's like kind of all mental, like you're still sitting here. You're not like running around in circles. You're not like stabbing yourself. It's not like super physically vivid, but like the internal mental experiences can also be like incredibly overwhelming and incredibly like confusing. Right. So it's both not a big deal and like from the inside, like kind of a big deal. So, when we're watching you here, you're doing something that's kind of a big deal, but also we're like still able to kind of talk about it. So knowledge of mind and body creates this like, there's a little like blip, there's a thought that like interrupted my like observation of reality. And then as I continue noting things, I'll just coincidentally, I will note something like, I will hear something and then I will like feel something and I'll be like, oh, I noticed that. And like another thought will come in that something like, I noticed that after I heard that thing, I moved my attention to feeling because that reminded me of this time that I heard a loud gunshot and then my like heartbeat ran up or something. And so there's like a cause and effect between the sound outside and my heartbeat moving. And that's a knowledge of cause and effect, right? So I first have the knowledge of mind and body. I go back to mental noting. Then I have the knowledge of cause and effect. It just like that's the coincidentally what I start thinking about is knowledge of cause and effect. Right. That's kind of the stages of insight. This is what we do. And like we're traveling a progression. And what I can do is just completely get distracted and forget the whole thing. And I'll like sort of float back to wherever I float. But if I'm deliberately mental noting and staying with it, I will be able to follow the entire progression of the stages of insight without me losing track. So here I am, cause and effect, right? Where are you now, Daniel? Look, he's kind of in cause and effect.
I have no idea. Is this cause and effect?
Well, is something like I describe happening that you're noticing one thing, then the next thing?
It doesn't really feel distinct.
Hmm.
Like I was jumping back and forth from like body to mind and stuff when you were talking about that. And then like there's a sensation. I guess it's body. I don't know.
Right. So the proposal of Mahasi Sayadaw was that the phenomena is about the mind's relationship to itself, and then so I might get cause and effect, interesting noticing about the mind's relationship to itself, but I also project that onto everything else. Like I project it onto the sound outside and then onto the way my attention moves. Or I project it onto like one person, I'm in a room with people, one person insults the other, the second feels insulted. Like there's a cause and effect relationship between those things. And because of that, I'm just in this momentary mind place of seeing the causes and effects in experiential reality, internal, external, but it's really caused by like my state has changed into like I'm looking through the lens of cause and effect right now.
Yeah, I don't know what that means, cause and effect. I kind of stopped with that a while ago.
Mhm.
Like even in my rational days, like it just like I don't know, the philosophy of cause and effect is like you don't know.
Right. That's more complicated and it's later down the meditative path of like not knowing and like pre-causal, therefore pre-effective. But for now, we're gonna like go with there is cause and effect.
Just like on a very basic aesthetic level, let's say.
Well, so
You push something, it falls.
yeah. And like going from you push something, it falls to like I do something and it impacts you. Like I say something and you hear it. Like
Yeah.
okay, like very basic, and then that can then have a progression effect to like make me notice that there is a bunch of suffering in the world. But later down the meditative path, if I can like note to a pre-causal experience, like stop seeing the cause and effect, then I can live in a world where causes don't have effects, particularly in my own experience. That's dependent origination stuff. That's a different track of meditative technologies. We're here in the stages of insight, and we're moving from cause and effect to the next stage is called the three characteristics, where cause and effect starts to get us to notice one of three things. Either the impermanence of all reality, and we have a whole episode on impermanence, the suffering of reality, and we have a whole episode on that, and or the lack of self, or the self or lack of self. It's sort of like depends on, but cause and effect. I noticed that, like I said, the one person insults another, and I noticed the second person felt bad. Like there's something about reality that causes one of the three characteristics causes suffering to be around from time to time, and that's like ugh. Like there's like that's like I noticed the suffering, or cause and effect. I drop something and it smashes on the ground and breaks. I noticed the impermanence of the thing that I had that smashed. Right? Or even more basic like cause and effect, like I notice that like I'm sitting on a chair, and if I move the chair around, it will like scrape the floor and wear away on the floor. And there's like the cause and effect causes an impermanence to all objects. Like, yeah, interesting. So it doesn't have to be personal and suffering. It can just be impermanent.
Yeah, I have a lot of impermanence.
Sorry, I'm just gonna like. So three characteristics territory, kind of interesting. And then if we dwell there long enough, we'll start to see like impermanence in everything or suffering in many, many ways. And this is kind of like, this can be dark night territory, that like suddenly we see a lot of suffering, and we see suffering causes more suffering, and then more suffering causes more suffering. It's like somehow I've like tuned my mind's radio frequency to like noticing a lot of suffering and noticing more the way it was causing more suffering, and it's pretty miserable there. So it's nice to be able to like
That happens a lot, yeah.
or like get used to it or make peace with the fact that there is a radio channel that is really quite bad.
Yeah. The radio channel of suffering, of the knowledge of suffering.
Right. Well, so in this case, it's the knowledge of the three characteristics of the knowledge of suffering. But yes, the knowledge of suffering. And, you know, some people seem to have that more than others. You might have gone through days or weeks where you really had that worse than usual. And then like days or weeks where you just kind of like didn't notice. Life was pretty fun and like engaging, and there just wasn't suffering. But it's interesting to notice that there's this like way we can tune in and way we can tune out of the knowledge of suffering. And like over the long term, I probably want to be less tuned into the knowledge of suffering, but not in ways that make me like really averse to suffering, right? I just, what I want is something like I'm just not super interested in it. And so I don't notice it all that much. And also, like, it's okay if it does happen. Like, I want sort of an equanimous relationship to it without the
Yeah.
really extreme. And if I can get that, then I'm probably living like relatively enlightened as an experience, right? There's no suffering. That's pretty good. If I can, the more I can do that, and the more
I
that,
don't mind suffering so much, I feel.
yeah, well, that's good too. That's
I
another.
don't
There's,
want it.
there's one path of like getting away from suffering, and another path of getting back in and making peace with it. They're different,
Yeah. Like it's a part of life. It comes up like it's,
right?
it's part of things.
Right. That's the first of Four Noble Truths. There is suffering.
Yeah.
That's
And
it.
I find if you chill out about it, it's not so, you know what I mean?
Right.
If you chill out and deal with it and be strong, it's not so like you feel better after.
Like after accepting suffering.
Yeah, or like after suffering, like you can feel good after if you like have a healthy attitude towards it.
Right.
Yeah. Which isn't easy, but it's part of life.
Right. So if we're in the like knowledge of the three characteristics and we've happened to turn towards the like this the suffering door, like okay, or the impermanence door, like whatever, tends to be one and not all three. But also each of them implies the others. Like that there is impermanence implies that like, I want a glass of water, but I will never be able to get the ultimate true pure form of glass of water, and it will always be impermanent, and therefore I'll always want a thing that isn't quite there. Or I will feel satisfied momentarily, but the satisfaction won't last, and that'll have impermanence as well, and then I'll be wanting a glass of water again. Like there is suffering there. Like,
Yeah.
kind of.
Yeah, with my baby, when I wash his hands, he always tries to grab the water.
Oh, right, the flowing stream of water, right?
Yeah, he tries to grab it and hold it. And he
So
can't.
interestingly, that's there's a couple of like timeless metaphors to describe impermanence, and one of them is like the river flowing.
Yeah.
Um,
Updated for modern sensibilities, the sink.
yeah, the faucet in the sink. So once I'm sitting in the knowledge of three characteristics, I start to notice the next one is called the arising and passing away. So I noticed and this is, so this kind of happens on multiple layers at once. But after traveling this territory, you work out it's actually happening on a very deep layer of like experiential reality of sensation. I noticed the like sensations coming and sensations going. And that happens to like, I notice memories arising and passing. Like, it's quite a nice place because like things come and things go. So the gonna give Daniel a moment to see if he can notice the arising and passing. It's also like this particular location in the stages of insight gives a lot of clarity. Like I can see very clearly that things are coming and going. So it's sort of like there's a real peak here of like, wow, like everything makes sense. I can see how things arise and pass. I can see how like my mind is clinging to objects or avoiding objects. It's like the fastest point of the cycle, maybe the sharpest point. And from here it goes downhill, but there's still a thing here that minds are like sensations arise and pass. I feel like I haven't very well linked back to the three characteristics. I think as I notice something is impermanent, like I move my chair on the ground and I like scrape the ground a little bit, like I draw a mark on the ground. I can see that like there was a ground and then it scraped away, like that's the passing, right? I can notice the passing of the object. Um, uh, the suffering, like if I'm watching one person insult the other person and the second person has the cause and effect response, right? That I feel, but the second person feels bad. There's like a suffering there. I can notice the suffering came up and the suffering went down, right? That they got offended and then they that was the it arises and it passes. Like my attention moves on to the next object. Can even be a passing. How's it going in there, Daniel? He's just like a guinea pig for me, running through the stages.
Yeah, I feel pressure, like in the back of my head, back of my head.
Right. Can you notice the arising and passing of that sensation? Like you feel it and then it's gone, and then you feel it and then it's gone?
No, it's slower than that.
Okay.
Like I can feel it moving, but it's like slow. Like it's been doing that the whole time.
Okay. Pressure in the back of the head. Can you give me a little bit more? Like what's the sensation?
It's kind of like like Valsalva maneuver when you like bear down and then your head gets like like you like push down on your stomach or something, and then all the pressure goes to your head starts to turn red.
Mhm.
It's like kind of like that. It's moving upwards.
Mhm.
I feel like it will eventually go up out of the top of my head.
Right. Do you want to feel free to let it go out up the top of your head?
Yeah, it's going.
Cool.
No need to rush it.
No.
Also, I don't know how to do anything with it anyway. So I just
It's kind of like we're doing some somatic processing here, that you're having pressure and then we're letting it move because it wants to move.
Yeah.
Mhm. Great.
Yeah, it feels like my main job is to just not panic and let it do its thing.
Yep. Sounds good. So
Now I feel good. I'm doing it well.
nice.
That's like a real thing, right? Like sometimes you're in charge and your job is to just not panic. And if you do that well, if you do nothing well, then you've done a good job.
Mm. Yep. Turns out it's very hard to do nothing. Bearing in mind also the so when we're at arising and passing, right? We start to notice that things are passing. Like all things come to an end. It's kind of scary noticing that, which leads us into the next place of disillusion. Like noticing that sensations do end and desires get completed, and things are permanent. Right. There's the name of it is Dissolution, and we get disillusioned with it's hard to describe the universal sense of disillusion, but it's the space after things end is kind of a weird, uncanny territory, dark space. But things haven't ended because we're still kind of thinking and we're still kind of present and processing. But one thing did end, or one or any number of sensations did end in the process of shifting from arising and passing to dissolution. And even now I can notice my voice has shifted. We're in this sad place. We're oh, things end. And it's this is not good. I don't like this. But not in a I'm motivated to change it. I'm everything that I care about is kind of dissolving. Which is the first instinct that people tend to have is to fight it. No, things can't end. And things are ending. Good news, things are ending. Bad news, it doesn't help to fight it. As necessary, if things need to end, we're gonna have to let them end. If things have already passed away, that we're on the tail end, And again, the proposal is that this is about the mind doing a thing with itself. And so the mind is going through this like thing where it ends itself, or like something, it's noticing the ending of sensations, then any like content that I'm having more recently, or like things that I'm annoyed about their ending will like suddenly pop to mind, like, oh, I'm only feeling this way because that thing that I like is ending. Like, and content has this way of like filling that gap.
Mhm. Yeah.
And then if I eventually manage to like accept, either like avoid disillusion enough that like I'm here long enough that I shift to the next one anyway, or if I manage to very quickly just accept the things that are dissolving, whatever it is dissolving, then I'll shift into the next one. And the next one is knowledge of fear. And sort of on the tail of disillusion has this like speeding up, like things are scary, moving quickly. And like, again, my voice has started speeding up. There's a way in which there's like a little bit of, I'd almost say terror here.
Do you feel that now?
Like a tiny bit. Like, look, I've been through this territory hundreds and hundreds of times. I'm like, I know the ropes here. But then we're like, it, to the extent that like fear isn't, well, like the same for me anymore as it used to be. Like I think I imagine I used to have the like the common experience of fear. I go near the cliffs and I'm like, whoa, that's scary. Whereas now I'm like, I can probably go nearer to the cliffs and I'll be like, oh, I'm having the experience of fear. Like I can lean into it and feel quite alive with that experience of fear. So
Like you kind of enjoy that?
again,
Would you like you kind of enjoy that fear? Like, is that a rush?
yeah. Obviously, I'm not going to jump off the cliff because it's still unsafe, but learning to be at peace with and enjoy the fear. That's that second path of like coming back to it and being with it. So the proposal again is from Mahasi Sayadaw that knowledge of fear is actually fear around this process. So fear that the mind has fallen out of reality, or that the mind is this like particular desire or mind moment is like coming to its end. It's like it's shaking for
So last time when we did that, I had the fear of like becoming manic
right.
because I'm like moving so quickly and just processing faster.
Mhm.
And then there's this afraid that I'm gonna like fall into this mania.
Right.
I don't feel that way now.
Well, things are moving quick. Mania is probably closer to where we are in the arising and passing. So lucky for us, we're already past it. We're just like, things are just fear now. But you know, it's like a subtle sense. Like we're still able to sit here, but like, you know, 4 or 5% of my experience is sitting in like fear. Like, I don't want to be here. I'm scared of everything right now. Like, okay. If I let content fill into that, like, what am I scared of? It like everything. I'm scared of other people seeing me. I'm scared of like being important. I'm scared of being unimportant. I'm scared of dying alone. I'm scared of just everything will just fill in if I let it. But I'm so used to it that I've like hung out with many of my fears of things. Right. Anyway, so fear then, like the next shift is to misery, from fear to misery, and I can feel it. Like the way I'm talking has slowed down a bit, and I'm like, ugh. Like there's some like I'm miserable about all of these fears that I've just brought up. Just like, ugh, really? Like that breath, like, ugh. Ugh, here I am. Right. Yeah. And so there's this sense of like, proposal is I'm miserable that I'm a mind stuck with a body. Like there is a separation between mind and body.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, as a kid. Yeah.
right. But like I don't want to be separate. And
Yeah.
like if I had, I don't know where else to go. Yeah. Well, that's kind of the surrendering when you get to there. But
No.
like surrendering to misery. good. It's good to like travel through it, right? We got to get to the other side of it. But if I had any content, if I had a miserable week, now is when I would be completely flooded with it. It would be like, I am miserable because of this and that thing that the other person said. It's very like, my experience was that the content would just like overtake. Like there's so much content, and it would just like here I wouldn't be meditating anymore. I'd be like overtaken. And I mean, I've traveled through these like over the course of an hour, or like we're doing them very quickly right now. But I've done it over the course of like 1 day per stage. Like today is the miserable day, and then like by the evening I'd get to the next one. But say again, you're very soft. Well, I didn't really have a choice. This is we propose that the 4-path model of meditation is that I hit stream entry and I'm in the stream, like I'm carried along through the meditative experience. No matter what, I can stop meditating, but I'm still in the stream. So if you hit the cycling of the stages of insight, you'll just keep going. You have no choice. It will, but you might as well meditate and like get through it more efficiently than like avoid it for 10 years and then you're like, why am I still miserable? Yeah. So that's the shift actually. From misery, the next one is called disgust, right? And disgust is like, why am I still miserable? Right? It's got like some outrage in it. It's got some fire in it. That's so interesting. Disgust. I've been looking for that. That's so interesting. There's a sensation on the breath that I've been trying to like work out what the heck that's all about. And I guess I don't usually like I got used to this territory ages ago and I don't like visit it inch by inch very often. But it turns out it's like this, the conversion from misery to disgust has this one particular breath in me that I'm like makes me cough. So I'll have to like I'll chase that up in my own time. But there's this experience of like, why am I so like the disgust? Like, how dare the universe present me with a world and a body and a mind? And like, I'm disgusted at the whole like separation of mind and body and the cause and effect and the nature of suffering. I'm like disgusted about the whole thing.
Really?
Well, this
that.
Well,
say again. Like, I've been like annoyed. We're like, this is how reality turned out to be.
Yeah.
But like,
the proposal is the pure form is disgust, and obviously disgust leans towards annoyed, and like I've got the like angry version of disgust right here, but it could be just like ugh. It's like averse. Reality is averse to me. I want to like pull away from it. What do you got? What's your feeling?
I have no idea. I have honestly no idea what's going on right now. I feel like a pressure like I should, because I'm like, I think we are streaming.
Right.
And so I feel like I should be like a streamer and doing a streaming thing. But I'm just being here. Kind of just enjoying hanging out with you.
That's good. I mean, I'm describing territory that I've been over, like I said, hundreds of times. I cycled one stage a day for like 6 months before I got the hang of it and worked out how to stop doing that in the shitty way. And then even so, probably like less than once a year now. I'm not sure if I'll do it ever again, but like in the last year, maybe last couple of years, once a year at least, I would get like thrown into this cycle, and then I'd be like, like 5 p.m. on that day, I'd be like, wow, I've been having a really bad day. Oh, I'm going through the cycle again. Like, okay. And it's because like at 5 p.m. it's sort of like I've been in it the whole day, and it's like it like I've made peace with it. It's already like ended. I'm like, oh, that was a cycle of insight. Okay. Mm-hmm. Why was my day so shitty? Like, okay. Here, it turns out I was cycling. I went through the cycle once again. And we like it's possible for anyone to sort of like, if they don't notice that they're like the separation of mind, if they don't like notice, like a good meditator should be able to notice when they're knocked into it, and then like travel through it within a minute, or like a bad meditator might like get caught in it for weeks at a time. in theory, like well-trained people would be like, oh, yeah, I'm like traveling through, like just like cycle through. In
Yeah.
theory, many of these can be passed in like a moment. Like there are 16 in this list, but moment by moment or a couple of moments, like a couple of seconds. And that's like not resisting, right? If it really is that I'm good at being with my body and my mind, I'm not going to resist traveling through this cycle as much as possible.
Yeah. Like a lot of these sensations are familiar with me, like they're not really novel sensations, but
It's nice to have a map for
like
me.
this, yeah, like doing it in this way or this kind of awareness is novel.
Yeah. It's also like this map felt very relevant to me at around the like second path. So post stream entry, before non-returner, or like even a little later than that. Because this map was very predictive of like where I was and where I was going to be next. And then later down the track, I can jump from anywhere to anywhere else on this map, because I just like I said, if all I would need to do to move from one stage to another is to like complete this loop and start another and get to that stage, right? And in theory, I think there was a saying something like can move from any state to any other state within 3 breaths or something. And it was like Dalai Lama's crew or something. Their expert meditators could like had the skill to move from any state to any other state within 3 breaths, sort of as a very high bar for like what you can do and how you can move your mind, which is super cool. Like in terms of like personal skill, I'd love to have that skill. I don't know if I have 3 breaths, but I can certainly move myself through the map quite a lot, which means like I'm able to be compassionate and understanding to many people because of how easily I can move through the map. I can be like, oh, I can see you're having a bad day. I know what that feels like. Let me come join you there. Like very easily, which makes like coaching and therapy very easy because I can just move around. And also having been through the map enough times, I'm like, oh, would you look? I can invite you to the next stage. I can invite you to move forwards. So at the end of Disgust, I'm even sick of being disgusted, right? I'm like, this is enough disgust. The next stage is called desire for deliverance, which is or knowledge of desire for deliverance, which the fascinating thing that I have here is this, like, occasionally I've had this voice that's like, when will it end? Right. And the fascinating thing is we're so close to the end here. When I get the voice, when will it end? We're just like this close. There's a couple more stages left. And it's like I guess like running a race, and I'm just near the finish line, and I'm like, when will it? Like I've got one more corner to turn before I can see the finish line, so I don't know whether it will end, and I'm just like, when will it end? One thing I think that is going on here is that sometimes people get that voice of when will it end, and they feel like they have a suicidal ideation, and they get very scared or uncomfortable with it. Where I'd say if it is desire for deliverance, it's less like a suicidal ideation and more like just this this self-narrative of like, I don't want, like, my mind is going through this stages and it just wants to end. So that's my experience of desire for deliverance, is this like desire to have the end of this cycle.
Yeah, I'm kind of in that space.
Cool. You want to say more about what it's like for you? There's like I just want to be done with this podcast for today. Like I want it to end.
No, I want to do the podcast, and I feel like I'm just in the state. Like I'm just going through this stuff.
Yeah. But so that like thing where content comes up and fills in, like, my content is I just want the podcast to end. I don't want the podcast to end, but also there's some voice in me that's like, when will this end?
Yeah, the pressure's gotten to, it's like my nose and my eyes now. But it doesn't feel like pressure anymore. It's like this wave. Oh shit, is this Kundalini? It's like a wave that's like coming up.
So technically, you can cross maps like that and be like, yeah, kinda. But practically speaking, I don't know because I'm not there and it's hard to tell. And I don't know Kundalini well enough. But in theory, all these maps are mapping sort of similar.
Yeah, because I've been doing like the chakra stuff.
Mhm.
That's mostly what I've been doing. I've been having like visions of it during this.
Mhm. Yeah.
Doesn't
So
feel like a snake at all.
doesn't
Doesn't feel like a snake at all.
right. So Kundalini is proposed to be the coiled snake that rests at the base of the spine. And as we do various Kundalini practices, the snake uncoils and climbs up the spine and like triggers things along the way, because obviously our body is filled with kind of all our traumas and all our past experiences and all our tensions. And so as it does, it's sort of like as it climbs up, we feel the energy moving through the body, and it's kind of overwhelming and very strong and very powerful until eventually it gets to, I think, the crown chakra. And if we can permanently like fuse the channel open, then it will like clear open and like we'll have free flowing energy all the time.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Right.
Yeah, it's like gotten to my head.
Yep.
Oh, maybe like it was more in the back and now it's like more in the front.
Hmm.
So I feel like I'm saying my words a little. It's like effortful to not do that.
Mm-hmm. Kind of interesting. I have not tried out enough Kundalini, so I'm not very good at mapping to the Kundalini process. So I can't give you many clues, but I can sort of just look from the outside. But after desire for deliverance, if we get used to make peace with desire for deliverance, we hit the next stage, which is called reobservation. Which is kind of like the whole thing all over again, but in a mild form. Daniel Ingram talks about it as like a like headless phenomena. It's sort of in that it's like toothless phenomena. It's like, here we go again. I'm about to go through the whole cycle from like mind to body, cause and effect, 3 characters.
Again on my own.
Right. I'm about to go through the whole thing, but only in the like a light way. And there's the really nice thing about reobservation is I can go back into like dissolution or fear, but it's like toothless. It's like back when I did fear, it like was really scary and painful. And this time, every time I go to look, it's like, that's not so bad. It's just fear. And it's not even that fearful. It's just kind of a bit. So reobservation is kind of like this final process of like just checking on all the bits. And I don't really understand why it's there. I wish I had some like either meditative or biochemical understanding of why it's there, but I don't. It's just there.
It's like a summary. It gives you a summary of what happened.
Yeah, in summary, this is all of them were shit and why they were shit and why it was bad to be they were suffering in reality.
Yeah. I like a summary at the end of a thing. Like
I've also occasionally felt like reobservation has thrown me all the way back into the loop again. Like I've gone like it's restarted my loop and I'm like somewhere in the middle again. But generally reobservation will like just sort of triggered back in like I wasn't done. I had more work to do. Like I managed to bypass something, but when I go through reobservation and go back and like actually do it.
Yeah, it's like because the next stage is the equanimity. So it's checking to see, hey, like, is this good? So you're checking your work at the end. And then if you're like, yeah, it's good, then you're like, it's good. It's equanimity. I like this. It's a good system, good design.
Yes. So just after, like you said,
It's like a PowerPoint presentation. And here's what you learned.
here's what we learned. So as you said, the next stage is equanimity. But it's not, we're not at the end yet, but we are at like, I've made peace with all this. I've just traveled the roller coaster and I've made peace with it all. Hopefully. Or at least the like whatever content came out, I've had to make peace with, because otherwise it just bugged me until I did. So we hit equanimity, and then there's conformity, change of lineage, path, fruition, and review. So there's 5 more, and they all happen like tick, 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 tick. So, or like review keeps going, but like path and fruition, conformity, change of lineage, path, and fruition happen like tick, 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 tick. Like you can't, it's very hard to separate unless you meditate. I've never bothered to meditate so deeply that I could separate them and notice the cycle, but it goes to show you don't need to either. Like it's a hobby.
So I think I'm still on reobservation because I'm starting to feel high, like marijuana high.
That might be equanimity. Like, and I would often notice equanimity because at the end of the day, it'd be like it would be 5 p.m. and everything would clear. I'd be like, oh, everything's just fine. Like after all, like I've just been through misery and disgust and like fear, and suddenly I'm like, everything's okay. Like this is the equanimity place. They're like everything is just fine. It's like refreshingly, it's a little bit up from equanimity for me.
Yeah, like I wouldn't say like everything's. I mean,
No,
whatever.
not everything in the universe, but like just all the stuff I've been worried about.
Yeah. Oh shit! I thought that was because I'm more clear-headed now. I thought that was a functional shift because I'm worried about not participating, and now I feel more clear-headed. So I can participate. So my worry went away.
Mm,
That might have been the other way around.
right. I hard to say, you know. We're doing subjective phenomena in interior experience.
Yeah.
Like this is, I don't know. This is fascinating territory to me, but yeah. How's it feeling?
Here I go
Oh, look,
again.
he's just like, you're just happy to sing it, like
Yeah, I'm just like happy and I feel light.
right. So we're not done. There is still conformity, change of lineage, path. But if we hang out with equanimity for a bit, suddenly like path fruition, something will click and you'll be like, everything makes sense. Or, you know, and then you'll lock into
No, none of this makes sense. I need to do it a bunch of times before I can get like an actual understand what's going on. But
right.
I feel like I'm able to participate better.
Right.
And
So generally, this is the like knowledge, conformity, change of lineage is the like, if whichever meditative path you're on, you're like, oh, that makes sense. Change of lineage is like, I get it all. It all makes sense, hopefully. And this is kind of why spiritual paths sort of like wear out.
yeah, dude, I was thinking this because I'm like, yeah, I'm on a path, and like this path makes sense, and I feel like because like doing this online or whatever, right? Like I don't think anyone else is doing this, and this is like a thing that goes on in the back of my head the whole time as we're doing it, and like I don't know, it's like not clean or whatever. Like I wouldn't say this is like prime time television that people would want, but it's it's a start. And like now I have that experience of like going through the stuff live on YouTube. Like who else has done this? I don't think anyone else in the world has done this.
There may be someone somewhere, but this is it's nice to have this evidential recording here of like,
Yeah.
True.
And I feel like justified in this. I do feel like like we need to figure out a way to make it like good television for people to watch, but you gotta start somewhere, right?
Yeah. I think this is still interesting territory, even if it's dull television style right now. But so this is change of lineage happens here, where I'm like, oh, I know what I get this path, and I'm like, oh, I don't need it. I don't like I've been meditating on the breath, and now I know the breath, and now I've made peace with the breath. I don't need it anymore. I've got to go find a new spiritual path to try out. And this is why you'll see spiritual people who hop from path to path to path to path to path. And that's because they've in some sense feel like they have completed a path, or like, and there's like a change of lineage. There's like oh, what else is out there? Like, particularly like only some of my problems were solved by going through this path this one time. This is the map, right? And then I must find, let me try out that other Kundalini process, or that other type of yoga, or that other, to see if that helps. Maybe some of my problems will be solved by some of those. And that's the change of a lineage and path is the like, let's try those. And then the fruition is the like I get it, like great, on to the next thing. Or I mean, that's not a good description of fruition, so I'm just gonna like say I didn't say that. But here we are at the end of this path, ready to start a new one, basically.
Yeah, but I mean, the new one is going to be doing it again.
Right.
I haven't mastered it.
Well, we kind of.
Oh, I haven't even like gotten it really, I would say.
It's like one option is to just get really good at enjoying it, and then it doesn't matter where we are or how many times we're cycling or how often we're cycling. It's just fun all the way. Like, imagine this were a roller coaster, right? And you're sitting in the roller coaster and you're like, oh, I know the next bend. It's the fear bend. Let's go have some fear. You just like kind of go with it. But feeling like you didn't sign up. Huh?
Like, I did enjoy this.
Yeah.
I did enjoy this, and I wouldn't enjoy doing it again. But I do feel like there's a loss of functionality when I'm doing this.
Right. Well, there's a way to be more functional in it, and
yeah, I think it's like do a bunch of times.
But basically, why not enjoy the ride? It's kind of the like,
yeah.
You know, there's a particular flavor of spirituality, which is Ram Dass's flavor of spirituality, which is why not enjoy the ride now that you're here?
Yeah, I'm down for that.
Yep. So that's the stages of insight.
Wait, what's fruition and review?
Harder to explain.
Or do we just not? We're just gonna leave those.
Harder to explain, so I'm just kind of leave. Like to put this in context, in Daniel Ingram's book, which I've linked in our description, like the earlier stages have like 2-3 pages each, and path has like, and fruition has like 1 paragraph. So this path has like 1 paragraph, and the previous ones have had like pages and pages and pages of description of kind of like the variety. Conformity's got a paragraph. Equanimity's got a page, but the ones before had like pages and pages of like nuanced description of like, some people see this, some people see that. But yeah, anyway, if you're interested, go read his resources. He's like really well documented some of his experience. But that's the stages of insight. And this all started because we were trying to speed up Daniel's thinking speed, his processing, because that's his deficit. He doesn't have the like processing speed. And I was so I got on the call with Daniel, and I was like, oh, you're looking clearer. Like, you're looking. So how it goes to me is that whenever I'm with someone, my experiential reality is like limited by the shape of their experience. Like, I feel myself only able to go as fast as the people around me can go fast. Right. And I can like push that and try and push through and try and be like faster. But then I feel like I have to push through a wall to do that. Like, my experience wants to stay with other people's experience.
That's something we should cover at some point.
It's also that I'm holding myself back by letting myself do that. But there's that's like my stuff there. This whole, but a cool thing that is here is that I can feel other people's experience by how I feel limited. So I'll meet someone who cannot conscionably access their anger, like they're way too uncomfortable to do it. And I will feel like I can't access my anger. I'll feel like I'm limited and bounded in my ability to freely lean into or lean out of anger. And so I know that person by how I'm showing up in front of them, just by sensing my own experience. So I'm like, I showed up with you today and I was like, oh, everything's like, I feel quite fast today. Like I have the freedom to move faster than I was moving maybe 3 days ago chatting to you. Which, you know, if I want to be my best self, I need to surround myself with the best other people in order that I can access the higher heights of my being, kind of.
Yeah. So you're like unlocking my potential so that you can unlock your potential.
Kind of. Something like that. But it's also like maybe the best people bring out the best potential in other people. That's like and like here I am going like, oh, finally I can show up in the way that I prefer to show up, being faster to Daniel. And then you're going to have a better time because I'm like more dynamic, more like speedy character as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you might notice this in lots of people around you in your life. Now that you're faster, they have permission to be faster.
Well, yeah. It's different. I find I'm just not limiting myself in those ways as much. But that's been like also like because we've been doing other work off stream.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of just accepting like, yeah, people are just gonna like mess things up or whatever.
And,
like that's fine. And then it kind of like gives them a chance to, like when I'm not like trying to do everything perfectly and just like, okay, they're like their mistakes are not my mistakes. And then I can like be my full self. It like lets them be their full self as well. And then we get engaged as full
together.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely have my own crap here in this, like the relational territory, but like at the same time, we do get more done together.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it's also like accepting my, like, cause I'm doing that for other people and I'm doing that for myself as well. And I was having like some stress because I made some mistakes and on this like project I'm doing on the community garden. Actually, I'm doing the community garden.
Ooh.
And I put like a bunch of stress on myself, and then I'm like, okay, we're just gonna do it anyway, rise above it. And then I realized like the mistakes I made were like very small. It was like very much like if somebody else would have done it, I wouldn't have even noticed or cared. I would have been like, yeah, this is part of the process. Don't worry about it. I have no idea what's going on. But I like it. I do feel clearer and more like less stressed.
Like you're just carrying less?
It's not that I'm carrying less, it just got rearranged. Like it's like when you're like carrying like boxes or whatever, and they're all just like in weird angles, and you have to like carry it on. Now it's just like it just feels like it's much more in a line. Yeah. Or like when you're working out, if you got like the weight tilted, like it's way more weight than if you do it straight.
Can you, so I'm curious, like since we're talking about mental processing speed and I prompted you a few times and now you're feeling generally faster. Now that we're here now, can you go faster again?
Yeah, well, there's the cycle. Like there's still like the head stuff is going.
Hmm.
So I feel like I'm slower just because, like, I guess from your perspective, I'm slower because there's more stuff happening inside me. Ugh, I got that disgust going on. It's like very visceral. Like I don't like it. It feels like
Right.
it's like almost like nauseous.
Well, I do have a proposal that all of these, like the mental phenomena that we're talking about, do have a physiological relationship, or like there's some part of it that's kind of in the body. But obviously, we scientifically we got to find it just yet. We got to run more tests and try and measure it better. But I do think that eventually we will find it. Call me
Yeah,
on the materialist side of spirituality. I think we will just kind of find it eventually.
yeah. We'll be able, eventually we'll be able to line up the theory and the practice, I guess.
Hmm.
I don't know. I kind of see like this, like the spiritual journey as like theory, almost. Like the actual journey is practice, but like all this stuff is theory. But it's like so doubt, like so far from like our understanding of material sciences or biology, whatever.
Well, I'm trying to like also make this material, the maps here, like concrete experience. I'm trying to take you through them on the spot as I talk about. Like I could tell you, like here that there's discussed, but I'm trying to go like, let's sit in it, let's try it out. What's it like?
Yeah,
To
yeah,
make
and that's the only
real.
reason why I'm accepting this is because I'm actually experiencing it.
Hmm.
Otherwise, I would have been like, I don't know what you're talking about. This sounds all made up.
Yeah. And maybe I should do like a better like double blind test of like find someone and like get them to start traveling through it and see if we can get them to describe all the phases and then line them up.
Yeah. So this what I do in normal life is kind of like the person's having the experience, and then we describe it, we talk about it, and then I'm like, oh, this is called that, and I just name it.
Yeah.
And then they always fight me on the names because they're like, oh, I don't believe in karma. I'm like, 10 seconds ago you're describing it, and now you don't believe in it. Like,
Yeah, there's ways to use language more gently, like, oh, this sounds like this other spiritual tradition I know where they call it this. And therefore, I haven't said you are experiencing karma. I've said this other
no,
tradition.
no, yeah, I don't tell them what they're experiencing because then they get all upset. But
Yeah.
we describe it, and then we like object level it, and then I'm like, let's stick a handle on it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's like I've had to make a lot of peace with just whatever language they use is the language.
Yeah.
Like I have labels, but like my labels are like less important than your labels because that's your territory.
Yeah. Well, because I'm not gonna sit and fight with them. Because I do that and it doesn't go anywhere. It goes a little bit, but
Yeah, it goes back into mental territory of like, is it this label or is it that label? Like we're out of the experience into the labeling game, which can be useful, but not usually. I must say that I don't use the maps very much when teaching because I just like if someone's like I'm feeling kind of miserable, I'll be like, okay. I won't try and like disgust is coming next. I'll just like let them use their labels and guide them through.
oh, I use the maps for myself, but I don't necessarily share the maps
Yeah. Same.
because they just get upset usually.
Right.
Or they get distracted or do weird things.
Right. Or it's like there's probably like a state thing here that if my state is like clinging to attached to the desire to talk about the map and share the map, then they'll pick up on it and then they'll be out of the experience in the map as well, and then in the experience doing the thing that is actually important.
Yeah.
Like
I have in the past gotten very fixated on the maps and then realized that's not what's going on right now. Like I'm just staring at a map and everybody is doing this other thing.
yeah.
Actually more interesting.
I'm happy to like share the map here because we are the Psychotech
But this is what we're doing, yeah.
But generally, I wouldn't go through this with people unless they're super into the map or they like really like if someone is very, very lost and they keep asking for a map, I may show them this particular map or a different map.
Yeah.
But
I
generally,
usually feel it out because I'll like say things. I'll like name things and be like, you should feel this coming up next, or like there's something here.
Mhm.
And then seeing how meta they can go and then sort of sticking to that level.
Right. Well, it's also that like if someone is lost, saying here's a map is just going to, in the future, when they are lost, they're going to go look for a map, as opposed to themselves on the inside going like, wow, I'm lost. How interesting. I wonder if I can find my way in here in the lost experience, which is
We're
more
looking for landmarks inside the lost experience.
right. Right. Or just like getting used to the lost experience and then getting past the lost experience on their own without a map. Maps are nice, but like if you have to keep clinging to a map, then you're not gonna
Very limited.
you're not a good navigator anymore. You're a mapper. But if you want to be a true navigator, then you're gonna have to chart your own course, even if there are maps available.
Yeah.
Like maps are a side hobby, you know.
I find them pretty important, at
Yeah.
least for me. But yeah, like I do like to get lost sometimes on purpose. Because also like other places, you can live other places, right? So if you get lost somewhere, like that could just be your new home. Maybe, or maybe it's a terrible place to live. But you don't know unless you give it a shot.
Yeah, so that's the map of the stages of insight. That's the like maybe we can get you faster on a more permanent basis. Who knows? And that's the like clearing a bit more of stuff in your psyche. And
Yeah, I would like more clear-headed. I feel like I've been not clear-headed, like foggy.
right. So
Yeah, I think you noticed that about me before I did.
yeah, it's also like I notice stuff about people all the time, and sometimes people need a push and sometimes people need acceptance. This isn't a you thing, right? It's just like sometimes people need someone to say like wake up, and other times they need people to be like, hey, you're doing okay. And so I'm in this constant choice of like, do I wake someone up or do I like be like, hey, you're okay? And also I don't know, also I get it wrong, also like whatever. Sometimes I've gone like,
That's okay.
also that's okay for me if I get it wrong.
Yeah.
So you know, there's this ongoing decision in me. I can see it. I can see the fog, or I can see something like, do I name it? Do I ignore it? Do I let it be? Do I accept it? Like I do that dance with myself all the time. And hopefully I make the world better as I help people. But it's sort of a dance. It's rare that someone would come to me and be like, fix me, like, you know, tell me, give me everything you got. And even if they do, they've probably got some like beating themselves up too much. Like, you know, the ideal student doesn't exist.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I know that because I tried to be the ideal student and it wasn't possible.
Well, just like the ideal teacher probably doesn't exist, the ideal student probably doesn't exist either. But we can sort of try and fit ourselves together. But yeah, that's stages of insight. That's mental noting. If you can get really good, so I feel like I should contextualize mental noting with this the axes. Daniel Ingram proposes that there are two main branches of meditation. One of them is concentration, and the other is insight. Mental noting is a strongly insightful, like it's focused on the insight path, and the insight path has the stages of insight territory. The other path is concentration. So the jhanas are concentration. Focusing on the breath is usually concentration. We're not trying to like notice the breath as fast as we can, as often as we can. We're trying to just be with the breath in the like the slow form, right? So the proposal is that different types of meditative paths are in the territory of the like more insight or more concentration, and these two paths support each other. We need a really strong platform of concentration on which we can do insight, and then when we notice like how like I need to be really still and really quiet, and then when I do insights I'll be like, oh, that makes a lot of sense, and like all of me gets it. And then we need really good insight so that I can build better concentration to build a really strong platform. right? So that I don't get distracted. I can see through my distractions. I can cut away the way that my mind is foggy, and I can be completely sharp as often as possible. So these two paths really support each other. It's also like the concentration one, you can concentrate on nice phenomena and really have a good time. And that's proposed to be what the jhanas should be. And then we have like, we're having a good time. We can go out in the world and be compassionate to people because we're having a good time, right? And then we have the insights, which maybe cut through our reality and let us see suffering a bit more clearly, but it's okay because we're just having a really good time because we got enough concentration. So this whole conversation, this is the mental noting, this is the insight path, which is separate to the concentration path. This is like, they're not separate, but this is much more on the insight than on the concentration path. So it's good to keep that in mind, that why someone may have never seen this territory if they've been meditating a long time. Maybe they've just been doing lots of concentration work. Why some people hit this territory worse than others. Maybe they're doing more insight, less insight. Yeah. Anytime you're having a bad time, feel free to go back to concentration and enjoy things and build a good platform of having a good time before going back into insight.
It's interesting because you call it insight, but it doesn't, it feels more like realizations than insight, or like at least how we would use those terms colloquially.
Yeah. I think a realization is a good subject, like that describes the way that you would label it. Yeah, that's the thing. The thing you're calling realization is the thing that various traditions are calling like an insightful experience.
Yeah, because like it's
moment.
like
an insightful moment. Like it's the aha moment, right?
Yeah, it's not really like that. Maybe it is, but that's not what's interesting about it, at least.
Well, the realization moment, that's the thing that you want, right?
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I'm like realizing what experience I'm having.
Right.
While having it.
Right. So.
But it's not like in my head, it's in wherever it is.
Right. That's the thing. That's the insight. That's the thing I'm calling insight. That okay. Like realization thing is definitely the thing many traditions are calling insight. But it's not like the proposal is that anything from like a quick quip, like, isn't it cool that birds have wings? Is like, that's like a tiny insight there to like, I can see how I'm causing myself the suffering that I'm experiencing. You know, that's right, like,
but this is all in like the knowledge sphere versus like the stuff I'm like there's sensations happening inside, like inside my head that go into my mouth and then go down my body. And they're not random, like it's like it's information, but it's not in my head.
Like your body is having a conversation with itself?
My body is having realizations, I would say. Like I'm talking to you from my head now because.
But you're experiencing through the body as well, and those are the realizations. Well, I would say they're all insight, and in general, we want to get more. And the body insights are clearly the more alive ones.
Yeah, well, they're the important ones. So they're the things that are going to up the processing speed, because I'm not going to have to, like, it won't have to go through my brain. It could just do the stuff itself. Like I won't have to like, like reflexes. Like your body has processes stuff, and the more it processes, or the better it processes, or the better that interaction, the cycle works.
I think we've got a few things going on. One is that, like you said, you were putting the brakes on the mental process, mental speed. So it's like taking the brakes off that is helpful. So that's one journey of taking the brakes off and letting if the mind wants to spin, let it go fast, let it find whatever it wants to find. And then from there, at least your top speed is in the like is no longer capped in the way that it was. And then we get the whole system to like move at that speed anyway. but they're sort of separate things.
Yeah, maybe there was something out of place because I felt like I was like blocking the system because I didn't trust the other parts.
Yeah, totally. You're not the only person who does that sort of thing. It's very common.
Yeah. It's almost like a internal family systems, but for your body.
Yes. Well, the internal family systems is partly meant to be in the body. Like one question depends on which type of internal family systems you've learned, but it depends. Like some of the schools are like, where in the body do you feel that part? Is a good question to be asking.
Yeah.
And that
Like I think the disgust, or at least like there's a weird taste like showing up in my mouth now.
All right. Well, do you want to investigate? We can like drill in on that and zoom in and see what's going on.
Actually, yeah, it's a weird taste.
So in investigating,
I have a lot of shame around this as well, which is what makes me think that it's like disgust.
So we're here to investigate, right? Our job is to turn our mind towards it and be like, what's going on here? Let's find out the details. And if you do notice like aversive, like shame, or like
attractive this morning, and I'm noticing that now.
We're just going to hang out with it and get to know it better, because that's how we're going to travel the territory clear next time.
I don't know if I want to do that on stream.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm kind of embarrassed that I admitted I didn't brush my teeth.
You're a human. Do you think every single human on earth has managed to brush their teeth every day of their lives? But this isn't about them anyway. This is like about you and the experience of embarrassment or whatever that you're feeling.
Yeah. And my body feels hot now. Like my chest. My
also, like, it's not going to get easier to brush your teeth if it's aversive, like it's embarrassing when you forget and stuff. So we might as well process all this and get it clear, and you'll probably end up just remembering more often to brush your teeth.
Yeah. But I'm also on stream, man. People are gonna know that I didn't brush my teeth.
For shame.
I do feel shame at this. I don't know. Maybe it's like I don't know what's going on, but yeah, I do feel a lot of shame about this.
Right. So it's good to hang out with. It's good to let it process. Yeah.
But it's interesting because it does feel like this part is releasing. And so like I won't have to avoid it as like a roadblock in my processing speed.
Good.
This is crazy stuff. Should practice this more. I haven't really had like a solid practice.
Like a meditation practice?
Yeah, well, because I was doing a lot of like the awareness and concentration. And then I got good at that and didn't really. And then I started biting off other things in my life. So I haven't really been doing like a sit down practice.
Huh. Okay, well.
Yeah, because that like the mindfulness concentration unlocked a bunch of stuff, and then like yeah, and then I was able to do more things, and then other things were going in my life, and things got complicated, and so it was just like practicing there.
Right.
But also I was doing it like the chakra stuff, like trying to like go up the body and notice the pools.
I feel like I have to warn you that mental noting may not like just improve your experience. Like it may like at first it may throw you into the stages of insight, this weird territory, and have you stuck in the middle of it for a couple of days. But like feel free to like the fruits are on the other side of that.
Yeah.
There is this piece of advice, like try not to let your stuff come out and dump on the people around. You know this. But
yeah,
if you're going to deliberately go into this territory, be aware that like it may be a little bumpy.
Yeah. No, but all the stuff is like that.
Yeah. Well, in general, just like try and be kind.
Yeah. I find all the things you wind up losing, like dissolution, like you wind up losing yourself at
Yeah.
some point.
Mm.
And then you come and then you show up again. You're like, no, I'm me. Like, what does that mean? That's for philosophers. Like, I get it.
Hmm.